Now we're going to head out in the coming week and we're going to do something pretty cool. We have snowstorm coming,
Big one.
big one, around Valentine's Day. So that's what we're looking for. We're going to trip out to Montana, but what we're going to wait for is old snow. And we want to see what deer are actually feeding on during the winter. And so, Jen?
I'm going to try not to crash it.
Crash what?
The drone.
So Jen's going to take the drone up, and what we've noticed in doing videos and creating our B-roll around the farm is we like looking at the feeding circles.
It'd be pretty interesting. We've seen, as we've driven by, some in Nebraska, like in our last snow, like in Nebraska and the corn and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see now that we're able to count these by popping that drone up. It'll be really interesting to see what's going on in there. And also, we should be able to see too, like where these deer are living too, based on what, where they're eating in the circles.
That's a
where
good
they're
point
eating the
too.
plots too, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point too. We have clover, brassica, our fall power greens, and corn. So it'll be really cool. I'm looking forward to it, to see not only what portion of the food plots they're feeding in, what food plots they're feeding in, but like you said, where they live.
What do you think is getting eaten the most, or what do you think will be shown that'll get eaten the most?
I honestly, well, corn is hard to beat, but we don't have a lot of corn left. And corn's like a really narrow use window, so it'll be interesting. They don't hit it much in November,
What's
December.
your second choice?
Whatever's the most volume of green. And so
brassica maybe?
Brassica, clover.
Yeah,
because the fall power is like early to mid-season.
Right, and then your brassica is more late season.
Yeah, a lot of green.
But then your clover is like all the time.
But you know what's interesting, like on the cameras we're seeing like not much use on, say, Leo's plot.
No. Yeah, so I guess it'll be interesting to see
which goes back to where they're living and what they're feeding on. Anyways, Jen's going to take the drone up.
Try not to crash it.
And we're going to literally count feeding circles across our 19 plus acres of food plots in Minnesota. So I'm excited to see and just kind of evaluate what they're actually feeding on. And what's interesting, we'll relate this back to the hunting season because it all relates back to the hunting season. I mean, if they're not feeding on our plots in October, November, December, it's all for naught because they're not starving around here.
Right, then that really means we got to do something different.
Yeah, we'll shape things up, which I think we're going to a little bit this year.
Yeah, stay tuned.
So Jen's going to take the drone out, pop it up, and we're going to count some circles. And I think we'll even probably relate it down to maybe like feeding circles per acre. We'll break it down to so that we can have a pretty even ratio and a way to look at it across the board. So
sounds good.
Stay tuned. Here we go.
Just drove up on some cool sheds, a cool buck that we've been watching this year. He's got a unique side on him where it kind of just like went straight up. So super cool. Jeff and I were just driving on this field edge road just yesterday morning on these sheds. Most definitely were not here. So just shed last night or early this morning. But we have a really nice food source that's right over here that we call the Hermit Plot. And then we have water that probably is about, 300 yards from here. So this is a nice access for them. They cross the road a lot, and I'm sure they bed across the road, but there's good food over there for them to eat. There's probably some great feeding circles in that food plot as well. Really cool. I think these are the second sheds of 2025, so really neat, really excited. There's a lot of good feeding circles out here. I'm on the Gold Rush plot right now. They're definitely hammering these brassicas right now. Really cool to see. A lot of tracks in here, a lot of good sign that this is what the deer are eating, during the winter, during these cold, frigid temperatures. Really cool. Really excited to pop the drone up. Hopefully we find some more sheds too. So we're going to pop the drone up and look at some feeding circles. It's a beautiful windy day today. I think it's about 50 degrees. So this snow is going away quick. So I'm going to pop the drone up and we're going to see where these deer are feeding. This snow is about a week and a half old. So we'll be able to identify exactly where they're eating and exactly what they're eating. We have different food sources out there. So it'll be neat to identify what they like, especially during all these cold, frigid temperatures. We got clover, brassica, greens, corn out there. So let's pop this drone up and let's identify where these deer are and what they're eating. I just got done flying the drone in my truck. It's a little windy outside, which is fine. But I was able to hit every one of our food sources to see where these deer are eating and what they're eating. So again, we have clover, brassica, greens, and corn out there. And one of the things that I found was a majority of these deer are eating in our bulbs. So our brassicas. Some of our brassicas are mixed with some of the clover as well. So they are going through some of the brush hogged corn. We didn't have hardly any corn left at all. So Jeff took care of brush hogging a majority of our corn just to get that soil ready for spring. The fall power greens, those are early season. So we saw like tracks and stuff going through there, but not a lot of feeding circles. Brassica and clover were those big ones. Really cool to see where these deer are eating. And it'll be really cool to count up all of these feeding circles to really identify where these deer are. And it's even more fun to see what they're eating right now. So it'll be really cool to see what other stuff Jeff is going to incorporate in this video for you guys.
So what we learned about these feeding circles, that was pretty cool. Thanks for flying over those.
You're welcome. I didn't even crash
Well,
it.
you didn't fly.
The drone flew. I
Yeah, the drone
operated.
flew. Yeah, you're getting really good
That's what I'm
at
doing.
that. So, but number one, first thing we learned, we have a lot of food.
We know. Takes a long time to plant it.
Yeah, and were you surprised at 19.75 acres? And I think I added it up correctly.
I mean, kind of. I guess it doesn't seem like we have that much, but when you do it like that, then when you think about how long it takes us to plant it,
Yeah,
yeah, it seems like a lot more.
yeah, I would say so. With that amount of food, we did not include the bottom plot. And why did we not include the bottom plot?
Because I forgot about it. Flew right over it. I waved.
Yeah, so we forgot about it. But we can attest to the fact that it was a pure clover plot, a really good clover plot, the bottom plot. Dylan, are you sticking B-roll in for that right now? It really is pretty.
Really nice.
Yeah, down there in the bottom. That's why I call it the bottom plot. But little to no feeding circles on it.
Yeah, it's just solely clover.
And this feeding, these feeding circles were after about, would you say, a week of snow?
Yeah,
Is that
week and a half.
It was that Valentine's Day storm we had out here. We were coming back from Montana then.
Yeah, we were.
So Jen waited about a week and a half, and there was a good window to go out there. And you'll see some of the feeding circles are a little bit darker. I think you went over the big 67 maybe 2 days later, 3 days later.
I think
Something like
yeah, I
that.
think
And so the snow was really melting rapidly. But it gave a really good illustration there.
Yeah, it sure
and
did.
it was still all relative. What we did is I added up, you can see clover, we had a total of 2.25 acres, even though we have about 9 areas of clover. Would you say that's right?
I would say so. Yeah.
Corn, we had 6.75. And it feels like it when we're taking care of it and adding nitrogen. And
Yeah, it does.
brassica, 7.25 acres. And fall power, 3.5. Now, part of that, we had more brassica. A lot of times it's a little bit more staggered out, but some of the areas we only had brassica planting in because we were top dressing the clover
That's right.
with our 365 blends. We had several areas that were establishing clover with 365. The one area was pretty big, the Badger,
Yes.
probably 3/4 of an acre that were establishing the brassica or the clover. So we covered that up with brassica. Another one was the
Leos.
Jack Plot.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
Jack Plot is a new one that'll be all clover, or you're establishing clover, so we're doing that with brassica. So it was a little misleading because normally we're about 50-50 with fall
Yeah.
power and brassica. And this year fall power was 3.5. So altogether, if we would included the bottom plot, there'd be slightly over 20 acres.
Yeah, which seems like a good amount for
Yeah.
the size of acreage that we have.
Well, it's a good amount for us to take care of. So thank God for Wes too. He helps out with the food plots.
Yeah, it does.
And a lot of times if I'm traveling, Jen is on there, whether it's spraying, fertilizing. We have a few hands in this, meaning Jen and Wes and I, but it takes a lot of work. And when we add up 18 acres of switchgrass, several acres of pollinator blends, and all our tree and shrub plantings,
It's
it's
a
a
lot.
lot to take care of, but that's how much work we need to fill in the size property we have. Boom or bust. Would you say that's a good way to describe the corn?
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
So it was pretty crazy. We had a little bit of use left over by then on Jim's plot of corn, next to nothing on Gold Rush, nothing on the Hermit, nothing on the Blade,
Nope.
and nothing on the logging of corn. So all our corn use, almost all of it, came from the big plot. And on there, we came up with, what we did is we broke it down, all these acreages, added up all of the feeding circle numbers for each separate clover, corn, brassica, fall power, and then came up with a per acre number. You can see right here we had 44 feeding circles per acre of clover, 17 of corn, 52 of brassica, and 19 of fall power. The clover, or the corn overall, there was 117 feeding circles. However, 100 of those came from one plot because we still had corn there. When would you say they start using the corn on our property?
Late season, December, January.
December. And so that's where we refer to boom or bust. The corn is more of a bust, October, November, December. We have neighbors that plant a lot of beans that are similar. They're not using them until wintertime. But when they do hit the corn, they hit it really hard. And so we had little to no corn use in through about mid to late December. Now, if we had extremely big snows and a lot of cold, we'd get some use.
Sure.
But we don't, and we don't typically. But even then, that use is not going to come till late November at the earliest, late or early December. So our corn window is not what we want for 6.75 acres total. So stay tuned for things to come, right?
Correct.
We have some things we're going to do to address that, because if our food's not working for us in October, November, December, that window, September, October, November, then
What's the point, kind of?
yeah, what's the point? We're dedicating a lot of acreage to corn that could give us higher power during that time of year where we can actually influence a herd, because we're not influencing the herd. Deer are not starving during the wintertime.
No, a lot of the things that we do look at is for shed hunting, though, too. So we want to make sure that, the food that we have is going to be good to go through the end of the season. So hopefully we find some good sheds as well.
But the sheds aren't a priority.
Right.
So it's cool to find, but we already know those bucks made it anyways. We already have pictures of them. So when we're finding antlers, it's more we just like to collect antlers. So, but which is fun. But I think we can even, with what we're going to do this year, I think we'll provide more power to January, February, March, because, boom or bust with the corn. What we're seeing with this is the opposite of what we see in the early season and mid-season and even all of September, October, and November. And would you say that even goes into early December?
For sure.
And what I mean by that is we're seeing clover, we'll talk about that, but corn, like I said, boom or bust. If corn's available during the wintertime when Jen flew over, they're hitting it extremely hard. But not so much in September, October, November.
When we'd like them to use it.
Yeah. Fall power was hit very light. In fact, a lot of those areas are just pure snow. It's hitting a little bit. But that's heavy use early to mid-season.
Yeah, there's not a lot left.
So late August, September, early October, they're hitting it really hard, and through November, right around there. And then Nebraska, is so good. And so then when we get down to clover, we find that clover is probably the most consistent use from August, September, October, November, December, January, February, and March. But there's a big but with that. It doesn't have a lot of power to draw. What'd you notice, like in the clover and the food plots when you're flying over?
There wasn't a lot of feeding circles primarily in the clover, unless it had to deal with brassica that we planted in last year to establish that clover. However, if they have to go through the clover to get to the brassica or the corn,
They're happy to eat
then
it.
they're going to eat it.
Yeah,
So, but
they're
if it's
still-
just a standalone,
Like Leo's plot,
sure,
the bottom plot.
you're not going to see a lot
Jack's
of use.
plot.
Right.
Yeah, so when we had those plots where the deer were not feeding the hermit, was lightly used all overall
was.
because, and that was interesting too, the brassica had some weeds in it.
and they don't like eating the hermit. I don't know if you notice that when there's a little bit of water hemp in there.
Yeah, they don't.
When it's mixed with weeds, they don't like it as much as if it's pure. We see that. We've seen that time and time again. But light clover use
Yeah.
because of light food plot. So, meaning if they're walking through it, they'll eat it happily. But the clover is not enough to establish a consistent draw by itself, at least around here. That might be different in warmer areas, Missouri, Tennessee, West Virginia, maybe even southern Iowa, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, Ohio, maybe. But you want more than just clover. Clover was the most consistently used with the least amount of power, where brassica, greatest power windows. And what I mean by that, it gets hit hard late October, November, early December. At some point they'll switch to corn if it's around, but then they're always hitting the brassica. So, and they hit it pretty hard. Harder than the clover overall. Clover to me has a use window something like this. Throughout a long period of time, even during the summertime, it's more like this. The general roller coaster, where brassica, once they use it, it's more like this, this, this. There's a greater window of use during the fall and winter than clover. Clover is just more moderate around the whole time, but it had to be dependent on something else. Diversity is key. That's the biggest takeaway with this. I mean, what do you think?
Well, without all these other things, clover is likely not going to get hit. So the brassica, corn, bringing in the deer, fall power is here in this.
Establishes the pattern of use.
Right.
So we like having the most diversity we could fit into one area. I think we have a solution for the corn this year going in.
I think so. Be a really good solution. Really, really looking forward to talking about it.
We'll reveal that in the coming weeks probably, and offer that for sale on Pure Wildlife Blends. But that'll be something that goes back to my roots of about 2000, 2003, somewhere around there, where a lot of these blends come from. And we're going back to some of those roots. But you want as much diversity as you can in each holding plot. At the same time, kind of like in a lot of these plots that are being used right now in the clover is just a pass through to get to the good stuff, which is why we have the clover in the hunting plots.
Right.
And then just go from bedding through hunting plot to get to the diversity plot. So, number 7, you're probably wondering what this is.
I've been wondering the whole time I've been standing here.
Admit it, are you a little nervous?
A little bit, yeah.
Come on, I'm not going to do anything too weird.
But you are weird.
So, Jen is, and this is a pretty good compliment, you're getting better at using the drone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I'd
feel
say
better
so.
using it?
Yeah. I mean, the stuff that Dylan's putting in there, he doesn't have to edit, so.
Well, Dylan, is that true? You don't have to edit anything when Jen gives you something?
Oh, he does. I'm sure he does.
But no, Jen is getting better at the drone work. She loves practicing. We love putting these videos together for you too. What about you? Did you like flying over everything and checking it out?
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it's good stuff to learn.
Yeah, so we'll bring more of this to you too, but we're always analyzing this. These are the kind of things we do, in our fun time, to count feeding circles anyways, but we thought we'd bring a video to you for it. It's kind of what I've been doing to analyze food plots when I go to clients. Jen's been to a few clients with me too, but we spend an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes on food plots in a given day, talking about what's worked for you, what hasn't been working for you, what works during the season, what works during the winter time, what works during summer. And so you're constantly looking at and analyzing when the food is being hit. And I think, some of this has some implications for those boom or bust periods, the diversity being critical, why clover is more moderate use but used in a longer range, and why clover is even used in the first place when the deer are on the way to something else. I'm not saying clover can't be a good standalone plot. And I would say in some areas where you have high deer density, a little bit southern, say Missouri, Iowa, place in Kentucky, if you had heavy, big clover food plots, I bet you they would be pounded in mid to late February like this, especially if they're the only things left standing. They're going to get hit hard, especially if you have a lot of deer and they don't have a lot of other offerings. It can be misleading. All of this can be misleading, so you always have to look at things like this and ask yourself why. So thanks for flying the drone.
Thanks for bringing me along.
Yeah, whatever. But no, it's fun. We love talking about this, strategizing, and bringing it to you. So I hope it's helpful. in helping you plan your food plots for this fall.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video all the way to the end. I really want to remind you about our Food Plot Seed Company Pure Wildlife Blends. I even have clients that don't realize we have our company, but the Food Plot Seed blends are flying off the shelves, and that's a great thing, and that always happens this time of year. I encourage you to check out everything. Again, purewildlifeblends.com, links in the description. But at the same time, we always carry inventory. So if you are the type that puts it off to the last minute, order it in July, we'll have it. But in the meantime, check out purewildlifeblends.com. We have a lot of different seed blends, pollinator blends, wildlife blends, switchgrass, everything that you need to plant great food plots and great wildlife plantings this season.